Welcome. Welcome to this month's Larry's Club webinar. Today we'll talk about the three-period lesson, which was popularized by Maria Montessori and used throughout the ShillerLearning curriculum. I'm Larry Schiller, and it's my honor and pleasure to be here with you today. A couple of housekeeping notes. This webinar is interactive through the comments window. Enter your comment or question at any time and I'll respond. I want to thank Antoinette LaGrossa and James Barger for their help with both the presentation and the administration of today's webinar. They're both online and will be helping with the commentary. These webinars are exclusively for members of Larry's Club. If you're able to watch this, it means that you're in the club. Welcome. Each month we'll cover a different topic. If there's a topic you'd like to see us cover in an upcoming webinar, just tell us in the comments. As with ShillerLearning lessons, there is no set time or time limit for this webinar. It will end when each of you has, by and large, both competency and closure. Let's get started. This important Montessori technique, the three-period lesson, works wonders to eliminate stress with math, language arts, or anything else. The three-period lesson is always used to introduce anything new, say a hexagon. Let's step through a three-period lesson with a hexagon. You can pick up a hexagon and say, this is a hexagon. The child may look and play with that hexagon, feeling the points or vertices, feeling the sides. That's period one, just getting familiarity with it, whatever it is. In this case, the hexagon. Lay down several shapes and say, you may show me the hexagon. This is period two. The child will point to the hexagon. You may also say something like, you may bring me the hexagon, which involves the body. The child is associating the name with the thing. That's period two. Finally, pick up a hexagon and ask, what's this? That's period three. At any point in time, if the child answers incorrectly, do not correct. And we'll talk more about that. Instead, go back to period one. Pick up a hexagon and say, this is a hexagon, as if for the first time. This is what a three-period lesson looks like. So we have period one. This is the naming period. That's what Montessori calls it. Hand the child a hexagon and say, this is a hexagon. Now, let the student explore without any prompting, without any what I call mansplaining. Let the child figure out how many sides it has on his or her own, how well it fits or doesn't fit with other hexagons, and maybe even ponder why it's called a hexagon. The key to this is to let the child experiment, play, and absorb. This is not the time to teach. Now, period two, show me. That's recognition and association, what Montessori considers recognition and association. The thing now has a name, and it's time to build how to recognize and associate what that thing is with other things. Place several different shapes in front of the child, one of which is a hexagon. Then ask, can you show me a hexagon? Usually the child will point at the hexagon, but if the child points at something else or doesn't know, no worries. Go back to step one. Put the material away, go back to step one, hold up the hexagon and say, this is a hexagon, as if it were for the first time. Then period three, what is? We'll know the child gets it when the child has what Montessori calls recall. Point at the hexagon. What is this called? If the child says hexagon, great. Next lesson, please. Otherwise, no worries. Go back to period one. This is a hexagon, as if it were for the first time. Let's take a look at what some of the benefits are to this approach. First, it's easy peasy, no stress. Now, tomorrow's a new day and kids aren't computers. They forget sometimes. And if they do, period 1. Oh, this is a hexagon. The trick to making this work, because parents want to help, they want to explain, is to understand that you help by not explaining. You help by having your child discover things for him or herself. It might not help to think of yourself as a teacher, but more of, say, a learning assistant, creating the ideal environment, not for you to teach, but for your child to learn, which may go a long way towards explaining why public schools don't work very well compared to Montessori, and why Montessori has a respectful environment for the child, with tiny chairs, tables, sinks, and toilet seats. As a parent, you have incredible power to influence your child's education, and the 3-period lesson is a great way to use it. It's part of the Montessori philosophy that says, teach, don't correct. Because when students learn to identify their own mistakes, they're really learning. We'll talk about mistakes and how to deal with them in an upcoming webinar. Now, parents who use the 3-period lesson are duly rewarded with very curious and capable children. Okay, they may still write on the walls, but your home will be a learning palace. Many children and adults struggle to learn something new. There's so much to know, including what's important and what is just noise. When a new concept, symbol, vocabulary word, or just about anything is introduced, the 3-period lesson is the tool of choice. It takes the student from basic understanding to mastery. And it works not only with children, but with peers, with adults. It works in the workplace. This is, show me what is. Now you have confidence. Whoever you're talking with understands what it is that you're talking about. Let's go into more depth and talk about an example with introducing the numbers. I'll need 3 of the same objects, apples, unit cubes, whatever. As you'll see, using this approach will avoid many problems later on with numbers, especially kids who memorize numbers and impress their friends and family when they're 2.5 years old and they can count to 16, except maybe they miss a number here or there, like 13. We'll understand why in a moment. All right, we've introduced what the 3-period lesson is. Let's dig deeper into each of these 3 periods. Okay. Nomenclature, or naming, is the key component of period 1. Now let's do what we did with the hexagon, but let's do it this time with unit cubes. And let's see what differences might be here. So we'll pick up and show the child a unit cube. Say, this is 1. 1. Notice how I repeat the word 1. Part of period 1 is getting multi-sensory understanding of the word. For example, you might say, you may jump 1 time, or you may say your name 1 time, or you may tap the table 1 time. Also, notice how I didn't say once, but instead 1 time. Consistency with the nomenclature smooths the process. Finally, in period 1, ask the child to say the word. Say with me, 1. This is not strict Montessori, by the way. ShillerLearning adds this auditory verbal component in period 1 as part of the naming process. Later, in period 3, and consistent with Montessori technique, the child will both verbalize and associate. Okay, now ask the child if she would like to inspect the unit cube. Then give her the unit cube while saying, this is 1. Wait until the child has closure on the inspection. Talk a lot about competency and closure. The 3-period lesson is designed to achieve both on nomenclature, both competency and closure. And I'll be talking more about competency and closure, what we call the 2 C's, and the 3 lesson outcomes that result in an upcoming webinar. Okay, put the unit cube aside and pick up 2 unit cubes. Show them to the child. Say, this is 2. Now the reason for this, notice I didn't just add 1 cube to the first one. I put the 1 cube aside and picked up 2 cubes. I did that to show that 1 and 2 are different. Imagine the confusion on the child's part if I kept 1 unit cube in one hand, and while putting the second unit cube in that hand, I said 2. Let's put ourselves in the mind of the child. The child is thinking, wait a minute, that was 1. Now I'm watching mommy or daddy take another 1 to put it in the same hand, and they're saying 2. I thought that was 1. Now it's 2. This is hard. Similar to, we avoid that problem altogether by doing 1 as a unit cube, putting it aside, picking up 2 unit cubes, and saying this is 2. Similar to what you did with 1 unit cube, say you may clap 2 times. You may say mommy 2 times. You may find me 2 apples. Then say with me 2. By introducing the verbalization in period 1, which Montessori introduces in period 3, we're simply giving the child experience saying the word. We're not really associating that word 1 or 2 or 3 with what's going on. It is temporally associated because we're doing it at the same time. But the real association, the recall, will come in period 3. But having them verbalize it in period 1 gets them used to verbalizing and is one less thing they have to deal with in period 3. Okay, during the first period, we isolate and highlight the desired nomenclature, and we reinforce what the words 1, 2, and 3 mean. Now, I won't go through this again with 3. I've introduced 1, I've introduced 2, and we'll introduce 3 the same way we did the first 2. By the way, repeating the word is good practice. Take your time. Don't rush. Being calm and serene creates an excellent learning environment and lets the child know he can learn at his own pace. Again, I want to emphasize that ShillerLearning includes verbalization in period 1. It's a variant on the original Montessori approach, which calls for verbalization to take place in period 3. But we have found that the child saying the word sooner rather than later forms deeper connections in the brain and improves memory, especially for dyslexic children. Now, you may think of the second period as a separate lesson, to be done only after the student has competence and closure on the first period lesson. With ShillerLearning, you'll find all 3 periods oftentimes in the same lesson, but they are truly separate steps. Now, period 2 helps the child match the word with the object or concept, symbol, whatever. Here we can use apples. You can put 1 apple down. Then, a few inches away in a separate group, you may put down 2 apples, and then 3 in a third group. Ask, you may show me 3. If the child points at the correct pile, continue, ask, you may show me 2, and then you may show me 1. You might have noticed that I started with a child showing me 3, not 1 or 2. The reason is that I want to start with the last thing introduced in period 1, because that builds association. Keep practicing in period 2, and vary the context. In other words, repeat for other objects. What's one way to do this? Apples, chairs, coins, nuts, anything you can find, even siblings or parents. You can even jump once or twice or thrice and ask how many times you jumped. During practice, you may mix up the order and ask her to show you 1 or 2 on occasion. Another variant is to ask the child to show you 1, 2, or 3 of something else and 2 of something else. This practice builds recognition and association. Words are meaningless without that. And children learn that the word 2 is abstract for there being 2 apples. Now, you may also ask the child to bring you 1, 2, or 3 of these things. This gives you the opportunity to say afterward, you may return the apple or apples to the fridge. So it really also enforces this notion of put back. When we're done with our work, we put it away. And as an aside, if you have a mat, which you will if you have ShillerLearning kits, that's the first thing that you put down. And then whatever objects you're working with would then go on top of the mat. As you can see in period 2, you are calling upon the student to show the appropriate materials. But what if the child answers incorrectly or does not show the correct number of objects? Whenever that happens, the moment that happens, put away the material, return to period 1, and say, this is 1. Then remain in period 1 until the child has competence and closure. Then you may return to period 2. This approach is magical. It removes all anxiety from both parent and child. It's so tempting to feel frustrated when a child doesn't remember something right away, or they got it today and tomorrow it's like you're doing it for the first time. But with a 3-period lesson, that frustration disappears because you say it as if it were for the first time. Oh, this is 1. Oh, this is a hexagon. One final note. Although in speaking about this, I only talked about the numbers 1 and 2 and 3. For learning the names of things, it is best to start with 3 things because children can usually handle that number of names at once. That's why we're showing 3 groups of apples here. Now the child is ready to recall the name of objects or concepts correctly. Usually, after getting confidence and closure on period 1 and on period 2, the student will succeed in naming things correctly, especially since with the Schiller modification of Montessori, they've already spoken the word or the words in period 1. As with period 2, start with the last object shown. Here it would be pointing at 3 apples and saying, how many are these? Or what is this? And continue until the child has named all of the objects. As with period 2, if the child names an object incorrectly or does not remember its name, simply put away the material and go back to period 1 saying, this is 1, and moving to period 2. Can you show me 1? Can you show me 2? Before revisiting period 3. Because the child did the verbalization in period 1, period 3 typically flows naturally and quickly. Once the child can name the objects correctly in various contexts, period 3 is over. All right, so let's just summarize. Of course, the ultimate goal is to help the child master the information for herself, and once the child has done all 3 periods, that goal is met. What the child has gained during the 3-period lesson is now the starting point for the child's next quest for knowledge. Every time a child masters a skill or idea, she builds her foundation and becomes more competent, more confident, more independent, and infused with a desire to learn more. Montessori says, teach, don't correct. The beauty of the 3-period lesson is that it removes the stress of teaching. With Montessori and ShillerLearning, it's not the parent's job to correct. Instead, it's the parent's job to help students recognize and fix their own mistakes. Make a mistake? Go back to period 1. Children will eventually recognize their mistake and fix it themselves. Aside from not being in correcting mode, parents are now able to avoid what I call math-splaining, whether it's math or anything else. When the child doesn't understand something, we simply return to period 1. This wonderful Montessori technique avoids tedious repetition of the parent explaining what something is or how something works time after time, day after day. With Montessori, there is no math-splaining. Children learn how to learn and they don't learn to rely on others to find and fix their mistakes. This approach builds competence and closure, which equates to independence and confidence from the start. Well, what could possibly go wrong? Probably the biggest mistake parents make is to move on to the second or third period too soon. Ask yourself, does the child have competence? Does the child have closure? Take your time and let the child work at his own pace. Again, a key feature of the 3-period lesson is that it does not include a mode of correcting the child. For many parents brought up in the public school system, that may seem wrong. Isn't it the teacher's job to point out mistakes and show how to correct them? Shouldn't a teacher math-splain when necessary? The Montessori 3-period lesson is an excellent example of the Socratic method at work in a simple but effective structure. But sometimes, when you ask questions, you get a wrong answer. With a public school approach, the response is to correct and explain, to math-splain. With a Montessori and ShillerLearning approach, the response is to go back to period 1. Oh, this is a whatever. So the child can identify and fix his own mistake. Albert Einstein said, "The person who never made a mistake never tried anything new." When your child makes a mistake, that's when growth occurs. Mistakes are okay. You might have noticed that the parent often says, "you may," when suggesting an activity. Montessori recommends this language, and it has been proven effective. That said, on our Facebook page, after James posted a video of how saying "you may" results in a less stressful, more respectful relationship between parent and child, we got pushback from some parents who basically said, "if I give my child a choice, he'll make the wrong one." When parents start from a child's earliest age, providing developmentally appropriate choices, we're not talking about let the 12-year-old drive, they end up with children who become independent and successful learners sooner. Children who have a trusting relationship with their parents. Providing developmentally appropriate choices to a child builds self-confidence and independence and learning opportunity. Now, maintaining eye contact is another way to show respect. Having that eye contact at the same level provides a consistent physical and emotional relationship upon which the child can rely. There's research behind this. Child development specialist Patty Kogan calls this parent juice. Love the term. A stimulation that releases good brain chemicals in the child's brain, and the parents one too. Children gain pleasure and calming from eye contact at eye level. Chen Yu, a psychological and brain science professor at Indiana University, and Linda G. Smith, a professor of psychology and cognitive science, also at Indiana University, conducted research that shows attention spans increase with respectful eye contact. Let's take a look at what some of the applications are of the 3-period lesson. There's regular types of naming. Here, regular naming with the 3-period lesson may be used for just about any group of objects. Vegetables. Pick 3 different vegetables. Work through the 3-period lesson with those. If you don't have the vegetables handy, you can use pictures. Ideally, it's best to go from concrete to abstract. Flowers, animals, trees, so many candidates of living things. Then, in your house, there's different types of food, prepared food. There's kitchen objects, all kinds of things, tools we use, utensils. Furniture, all the different types of furniture that are in the home. These are ideal candidates for children to learn the names. Continents, bodies of water, countries, map features like rivers and lakes and oceans. Now, in math, you may even use the 3-period lesson to teach algebra, geometry, trigonometry, even calculus. I know Montessori is designed up through 8th grade. So why are we talking calculus? Well, this is an integral sign. Can you show me an integral sign? What's this called? And then move on to show that the area under a curve may be determined by integral calculus, and here's how we use the integral sign. Another application is with two-object comparison. This always involves two objects. This is long, this is short. This can work with anything that you can compare. Dark, light, big, small, loud, soft, pointy, smooth, rough, smooth, wet, dry, warm, cold. We place the two objects of a group and isolate them on a map. We look the child in the eyes and name the difference. This is short. This is long. Let them say the words and both see or hear and feel the difference. And the reason I say hear is because maybe it doesn't involve putting something on a mat. Maybe it's, this is loud, this is soft. And so a child uses multisensory approach, parent uses multisensory approach to reach the child. There could also be a kinesthetic approach. I'm jumping high, I'm jumping low. And a child can actually see the difference. Step 2, the recognition period, it's the same as step 2 of the above. Which is dark, which is light? Am I jumping high or low? Well, in true period 2, which jump is high? Which jump is low? Which voice is loud? Which voice is soft? Then you may say, please give me the short object. Please place the long object here. You may speak softly. You may speak loudly. And finally, in step 3, with these different applications for two objects, it's the same, step 3 of the above. What is this? It's dark. What is this? It's loud. Then, with 3-object comparison, we learn the concept, our children learn the concept of superlatives. In step period 1, the naming period, it involves 3 objects. We name them. This is small. This is smaller. This is smallest. It works with dark, big, long, loud, pointy, rough, wet, warm, just about anything that can result with a superlative. Now we place 3 objects of a group and isolate them on a map. Actually, 3 objects in 1 object each in 3 groups. We look the child in the eyes and name the difference. This is dark. This is darker. This is darkest. Repeat this, but replace 1 or 2 of the objects with objects different as to the ones taken out. So, for example, and Montessori calls this grading. If you are grading the color, you might take out a darker red that's still darker and not darkest, and not the lightest. So a child can see that we're talking about superlatives and not the absolute color. The child learns to understand that the color of the object only depends on what it's being compared to. In the recognition period for 3-object comparison, again, it's the same. Which one is the darker? Which one is the dark? Which one is the darkest? And in step 3, the recall period, what is this? At any point, again, if the child answers incorrectly, we go back to period 1. Oh, this is warm. This is warmer. This is warmest. And here are some more examples of how this could be used. I mean, we've talked about vegetables and living things and continents and countries. In a practical way, we also use them with grammar symbols. And this is how ShillerLearning introduces grammar symbols in our language arts curricula. We use the 3-period lesson. Similarly, for suits of a deck of cards, in our math kit 2, we find playing cards are really interesting. Kids love to play with them, and it teaches so many different math concepts. not just arithmetic, but combinatorics and groupings and notions of sets all come to life using playing cards. And in language arts, we talk a lot about syllables. And so here we have 3 words. The first, day, has 1 syllable. The second, baby, has 2 syllables. And the third word, alphabet, has 3 syllables. So we could say this is a syllable, day. This is 2 syllables, baby. Say with me, baby. This word has 3 syllables. Alphabet has 3 syllables. Alphabet. Say with me, alphabet. Very quickly, children will learn the concept of a syllable. And that makes it a lot easier when in our language arts kit, for example, we talk about Shakespeare and iambic pentameter. And kids really get a sense of how these words sound as well as what they mean. Great. So we have now gone through the 3-period lesson, lots of examples, and let's take a look and see if we have any questions or comments from folks who are watching this on Larry's Club. And I'm looking through the comments now. And Tracy, I thought they were supposed to explore prior to naming. You're absolutely right. That is the Montessori thing. We have introduced, as opposed to naming, we really just call it verbalization of the word. So in fact, in period 1, they really are not naming. They're just verbalizing it. Natalie, I hope you were able to access the video. Let's see what other comments that we have. Tracy, okay, you're welcome. Modified Montessori, that's good. Jill Mackey, my son is saying, I want to do Schiller or nothing. We love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Let's see, hopefully the slides did update. And that does look like the rest of the comments. This video will stay on Larry's Club for your future review. Please email sales@shillermath.com or call 888-556-MATH with any suggestions for future webinar topics. Did you know that you can earn money and save your friends money when you recommend ShillerMath? Just log in and go to your downloads page and enter emails of friends you think would like ShillerMath, ShillerLearning. You'll earn $10 in credit for each new customer, and your friends will save $10 too. Thanks to Antoinette and James for help making this video possible. And thanks to each of you for joining us. I'm Larry Schiller, and this concludes today's Larry's Club video.